Brought to you by stationhousecoffee.com and inspireddisorder.com/audible.
What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.
Two Bears, One Cave, an XXL event was live, unedited, unfiltered, uncensored version of Two Bears, One Cave, the great podcast hosted by Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura. Of course, through the YMH virtual portal, where there's been so far two of the Uncensored YMH, Your Mom's House podcast so far, which I've enjoyed both of those. And with this one, I was looking forward to it. The premise was they were both going to get highly intoxicated and do some fun stuff on the show. So I was looking forward to it. The show itself, the intoxication and the, let's say, the methods of getting wasted were highly limited. It basically boiled down to just them getting wasted on booze. There were rumors that they were going to try and do cocaine. Of course, there was this, running bit throughout the show as they're waiting for their coke dealer to show up. Even though I never felt considering that they didn't even they didn't smoke weed, right? Because of fire, whatever. Which for sure I would imagine they could do it, or at least vape. They could have vaped weed. Tom did eat 10 milligram edibles about once every 30 minutes, which I did enjoy, and they did get drunk. So it's not like it was that much of wolf tickets. Trying to watch a show where I'm going to watch them get fucked up. They did drink a lot and they did get fucked up. So it was worth it, regardless of the fact that I was hoping that they would be doing more. But it was a great show. It reminded me a lot of a podcast that inspired me. The first podcast I watched back in 2010, 2008, show called Dignation with Kevin Rose and Alex Albrecht. They would sit on a couch. Two dudes sitting on a couch, laptops on their lap, and they would go over tech news, but they would both get drunk during the episodes, and especially live episodes. This was way before comedians ever did podcasts, by the way. They did live episodes in front of live audiences, and those they tended to get extremely wasted. So that reminded me a lot of those. There's also many episodes of my old podcast, the Inspired Disorder podcast, where I would get wasted or other people involved with the show would get wasted. Inspired Disorder podcast during the Denver years, Keith and I would regularly be smoking weed while doing the podcast. And then, of course, Getting Doug with High, where Doug Benson gets high with his guests. Which is a show that used to be, there's a lot of past episodes on YouTube. It's currently the only form of it is on Patreon. Hopefully it will come back to its original form, but I'm not going to hold my breath. So it kind of reminded me of those shows, those episodes. So not an original idea necessarily of two podcast hosts getting intoxicated for a show, but they did definitely take it to the next level. And, of course, the show was intercut with segments that they did previous to doing the live show, which was awesome. They did many segments with them with the dominatrix, which I thought was actually a little vanilla. I was kind of hoping that they would get into it even more. I have a feeling if Bobby Lee was with them, it just seemed like, I don't know. It seemed like they were too scared. They weren't willing to really go in fully with the dominatrix, but it was still a really fun segment. They also showed their tennis match, which I thought was hilarious. The tennis match they've been kind of setting up for a while. Of course, Bert, having the Mickey Mantle gene, was able to really showcase that in that segment, destroying Tom Segura in the tennis match. They also had some fun guests on. I guess there was also one other segment where Dr. Drew interviews Bert to try and get him a sleep apnea machine. And they showed how Bert sleeps in his bed, how many pillows he has set up. He has like this this very specific kind of setup for how he sleeps, and it's very interesting to see how, especially once he gets drunk, how much of a kind of a whiny asshole Bert can be, because he was kind of being a jerk to Dr. Drew, and his interpretations of things. Bert tends to, in his head, cast himself as the victim in a lot of instances, for no reason. He kind of remembers himself as being victimized quite a bit more than when he actually sees the replay of the events, how much differently they actually go. But yeah, it was interesting. That was an interesting part as well. Of course, they interviewed one of Bert's favorite porn stars, male porn star. I thought that was a fun interview. They had Sean Evans from Hot Ones on there, which by that time they were both extremely wasted, but still very, very good, man. Sean Evans is a pro in so many ways, such a pro. And so are they, both Tom and Bert. At least Tom, anyway. Bert's kind of a fly by the seat of your pants kind of a guy. Still a great show overall. I really enjoyed it. It's kind of fun. Just having something to look forward to in a week that's different and more special than just your standard podcasts that come out. And there was a story where Bert was talking about how he chose his openers for his tour that he's going on. And I think Shane Smith? No. Not Shane Smith. That's Vice. I forget the guy's name, but he was somebody. He was talking about. He mentioned a time he was on Doug Loves Movies, which is a podcast that I watch where Doug has comics on and they play movie trivia games. And Bert was on quite a long time ago, and it was kind of a train wreck. He brought like 50 burgers to hand out to people. He really just kind of threw a wrench in the show and kind of really took Doug out of his element as far as just hosting a trivia game show. And Bert, of course, drunk, ended up being kind of an asshole to Tate, Jeff Tate, who's an amazing comic, who's friends with Tom Segura and friends with a lot of the same comedians they're friends with. But for whatever reason, there was an instance where I think Bert felt like Jeff was making fun of him, which he was, because Bert was ruining that podcast. And then Bert was, you can tell, like, there's a switch with Bert where it goes from, like, he did it with Nadav also, where he goes from like just happy-go-lucky to like when he feels like he's being insulted or something like that in his head. It's not in reality. He has this victim mentality in his head where he thinks that people are acting a lot ruder to him than they actually are, and I think there was a similar instance on this Doug Loves Movies episode with Jeff Tate, which to this day I don't think they're friends. Jeff Tate and Bert. I've never seen them on the show again together. Despite them being, having mutual friends across the board, you don't see them kind of. And it was like a superiority thing Bert had, because Bert like insulted where Jeff Tate was at with his comedy career. Very cringy episode. It's an episode that you can only get, like, you had to buy it. Doug Benson put it out as a one-off episode that you had to, it was like $2-3, and I had to know because I'm a big fan of that show, also a big fan of Bert Kreischer, and to hear something went cringy and went horribly wrong. And they did a podcast the next day where Bert and Doug kind of hashed things out. And since then, Doug's really kind of been a lot more loose with the types of games he has, depending on the guests that he has. But yeah, it was something that was interesting that it came up in the Two Bears One Cave XXL event, where he was talking about how he chose his openers, and there was that specific instance that happened on Doug Loves Movies, and Bert called one of the other guests that were on that panel and asked them, their honest opinion of how things went. And because that comedian was so honest, that was one of the reasons why he had him go on tour with him. which I love Bert. You know, there's a lot of Bert that I see in myself, which I don't like about myself. But like, you know, it's clear that he lives in his own delusion, and a lot of the times, like whether it's his stories, he really lives in his own storyland of reality, where most other people are experiencing a slightly different version of reality than he is. So it's always interesting to see and hear the other sides of the stories that Bert tells. But yeah, the Two Bears, One Cave XXL event was amazing. I can't wait for the next one. I'm interested to hear the recaps of how they felt the next day, because I'm sure they were very hungover. But I loved it and really enjoyed it, and looking forward to hopefully more. Hopefully more. I really enjoy these uncensored things that YMH Virtual is doing. And even though I don't think you can watch it now, but if you go to, I think through Tom Segura's website, you can actually rent the previous. Eventually, you'll be able to rent these episodes and watch them not live. But it was great. It was great. Worth the $10 for the ticket, and I had a lot of fun. So check it out if you get a chance. Two Bears, One Cave XXL event, and of course, subscribe to Two Bears, One Cave podcast. It's a fun podcast. Make sure you support our sponsor, StationHouseCoffee.com, and follow Station House Coffee on Instagram for small batch, single origin, premium coffee brewed in Thetford Center, Vermont, and shipped directly to you. Support small business and get yourself some amazing coffee. Order yours now over at StationHouseCoffee.com and follow Station House Coffee on Instagram. Get yourself 2 free books with your free trial subscription to Audible. Use my link, inspireddisorder.com/audible. That's AUDIBLE. It's 1 free book credit per month. A bunch of Audible originals, guided wellness programs, news, everything for you. But get yourself 2 free books just by signing up through my link, inspireddisorder.com/audible. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on IGTV, YouTube, and everywhere else podcasts are found. Binge the full week ad-free over at patreon.com/inspireddisorder. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com and follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!